I personally even experienced watching public execution. I was only 11 around. Hundreds of crowd people gathered. But specifically told all children come out, sit at the front of the crowd. So the first bullets, it went into eyes. The eyes was covered, and that bullet popped out the eyes. So I was born in a small town around 10,000 population in North Korea and close to Chinese border. It's strange, and also every time when I think of that moment I was born in North Korea, it gives me a lot of reflection and emotional, and I still miss it. I still miss my friends. Many of my friends were died of starvation during the famine. And many of them also joined the army and died of malnutrition. But some of them are still there. You know, the feeling of nostalgia, your hometown, smell of it. Maybe that town doesn't look like a beautiful town, but surrounded by mountains. And you can still smell of farms. The road is not even concrete. And where you used to play with friends and swimming. And schools. So we all have our own, and that feeling of where you were born, grew up, spent time. So it's a beautiful country, and many 25 million people, which are wonderful people. It's just where they live in that kind of cage, large prison country. It is hard to understand country actually in the 21st century, and that complete information and everything come from outside is denied. And of course you have no phones, and even there are available few phones, those the elite who can use, but you are only allowed to call within the country. Messages and calls are tapped. There is no internet, no YouTube, no Facebook, no Zoom. You can have jeans, because jeans, they say it's American production, and America is the greatest enemy. You only have certain hair types in this country. It's a tragic joke. If you have like leader's hairstyle, you end up in prison in North Korea, which is true. And what about the freedom movement? Having mentioned, in the UK we live a privilege where you can travel between London, Manchester, Birmingham, anywhere, just train ticket, get on trains. In North Korea, every step of the movement within towns, villages, you need travel permissions and document to travel. And TV, when you buy a TV, police come and take all channels out, and they leave only one channel. You meant to watch the Kim family program 24/7. That's why when you were born, we did not expect to leave the country. We wouldn't ever think of that because we were born without passport in this country. This is what we call prison country.
When you were growing up, what was your relationship or feelings towards the Kim family?
I loved them. I thought they were God because I was brainwashed and I didn't know. So growing up from that very young age, and you bow to them and you regard them as God. And outside the house, you have Kim family monuments everywhere you go. This is a common thing you see on TV where people bow to the giant statues. I remember when I was in primary school, early in the morning, going cleaning and wiping and making shining the statue. It was a proud thing. I was regarding it. And if you done it and teachers praise you, all your loyalty and devotions for the Kim family, and everyone clap for you. So I thought actually they were God. And when I was 7, Kim died, first Kim died. And I literally cried and didn't sleep well for 3 nights. And I even went to mountain to collect flowers because that's the least thing I could express my love and loyalty to them, to him, and as my God. And then in tears, I asked my father, Father, are we all going to die? I thought we were all going to die. It was the end of the world, I thought, in tears. And my father said, no, he's not died. He lives in our heart forever. It's eternal leader. But this brainwashed and education and indoctrination, that is just something very, very scary. And it still remembers me vividly. I personally even experienced watching public execution. I was only 11 around. And we were all told to come to that public execution place to watch it. Hundreds of crowd people gathered, but specifically told all children come out, sit at the front of the crowd. Children. And the man tied up on the post, he was a criminal because he helped. His crime was he helped 3 North Korean women to cross the border to China. So 3 policemen came from about quite short distance. Each one was having, AK-47, and each police had 3 bullets. So the first bullet, it went into eyes. The eyes was covered, and that bullet popped out the eyes. And second 3 bullets went into the belly button, where the belly was tied up as well. And third was on knee. Now, the body was fall into a hole that prepared. And underneath, there was something could wrap up the dead body. That was public execution.
Could you tell me a little bit, Timothy, about your family growing up?
My parents, both of them were high school teachers. My father was a history teacher. He had a number of historical event books in our storeroom. And I loved to read from a young age. And when I was reading, my father said, these things, what you read, you cannot share anything what you read from home when you're outside.
How did you come to realize that your parents were no longer at home?
From the day when I came back from school, you could see they were left. And now I ran to the train station. The train was gone. And you sat down at the railway and crying and crying. And then from next day, the reality comes. I went to my uncle's house. I thought that they might be able to look after me, which I went and on the train, cold weather, and arrived. On my arrival, went to uncle's house, and I could see sweet corn bread and soup on the table. It was quite warm. You feel hungry. You feel relieved that thinking you were able to eat. But my auntie and uncle were there. They would not ask me if I had eaten at all. It's not actually the Korean have this phrase, when you see someone who travels and knocking on your door, we provide them food and bedroom and give even some lunchbox. That's kind of a phrase how Korean people usually kind to take care and look after when guests arrive, even strangers. But this kind of humanity was not able to see even among relatives. They were concerning because of they were also going through a hard time. They were not able to feed me. So I left to my uncle's house in tears and then went to the market picking up food on the floor. So the memory, it was many years ago, but it remains deeply. I don't blame them. I don't blame them. And I have seen many kids died of starvation on the streets. And even myself often slept train containers on the bridge at the station. You could easily see what happened seeing died of children next to you in the morning when the city council come and collect these dead bodies.
How long were you on the streets living?
It was not that long, but it was a while enough. I experienced, survived. I'm seen more than enough what children were going through. So few years on the street, and then after that, I went to my grandmother's house, my mom's mother, and was relying on her and helping her farm work, growing food in mountains. It was a few years' time of my life with my grandmother. It was one of the best moments. I did ask my grandmother so many times, why my parents gone? I didn't understand because at that time, which I now understand. And then she was crying with me. So it was love. She was like my mom, yeah. Until I escaped from that country. So at the time of my age, finishing high school, now I was thinking about my life ahead. What kind of opportunity I have? What can I do in this country? And all boys in North Korea, they must join the army for 10 years. So I went to military office, and when I asked and told them I want to join the army, and then the officer told him, no, you can't join the army because your father betrayed this country. And I said to them, my father betrayed this country, not me. So I could work hard to pay back my father's crime. I didn't even know what my father's crime was. The only crime, if we had it, he escaped that country because of due to political persecution. And when I asked them, where can I go? And they told me, we will send you to coal mine. This was the worst environment, coal mine, where you're going inside, but you literally have to crawl inside and digging coals out. And often mines collapsed, and many young, large boys and girls are killed or even losing their arms and legs. And that moment when I heard all my, even the last part of trust, what I thought and believed in this country, it was disappointed. I felt now I was abandoned twice. Even my own country that I was born, I loved. And I wanted to continue love this country and leaders. I made a decision to escape to another country at that moment. So I escaped across the border to China. There were 4 people with me. So you have to cross the Tumon River. It's a river between China and North Korea. So we actually walked, 5 of us, and at night time. But if you were discovered, you could be shot and killed. But thankfully, that time in 2004, they didn't have a wire fence. Now on the border, they have 2 layers of wire fence, completely sealed the border. So we arrived in China. And once we arrived, we said bye each other. So I don't know what happened to that family then. And now I walked and arrived at one of the city Chinese market, border city market, and there I was quite shocked. It was one of the most shocking experiences I still regard in my life, because first time I saw spinning 7 colorful lights on the market. It was as bright the market ever seen, and music was going on. All these young people having red, yellow, blue hairs, and jeans with holes, and exotic food smells on the market. It was never I expected. It was never what I thought, what I heard, what I learned in North Korea. I was like, wow, this is something different world. And I thought that moment, for 17 years of my life in North Korea, what I learned and told me the best leaders and best country in the world, it was total liars. And why didn't I escape earlier? It was lucky that I met one missionary guy who said, I am helping North Korean orphan and refugee children. So I actually followed him, and I went his house. The first thing I saw in this missionary's house, I saw the cross. As soon as I saw the Bible, I was shaking because I thought it was cursed. And I thought even you touch the Bible or cross briefly, my finger would be rotten right away. And I saw children in the house, North Korean orphan children, and a few orphan children were staying in the house. I thought that missionary guy was kidnapping North Korean children, which there are anti-religious propaganda programs and films, dramas, cartoons, and even textbook stories, school textbook stories, how missionaries or religious people came to Korea, how they did many bad things and kidnapped the children. And this brainwashed education was coming back to me. And I ran away actually from the house. So it meant to be a safe house. The support helped me, but I felt it was not safe. I ran away. I met these 17 people at the Manchuria train station, where together we attempted to cross the Mongolian border, get into Mongolia, and continue on our journey. And seven people in that group was a whole family. You can see husband and wife, 2 children, grandparents. And the youngest age in my group were 4 and 6-year-old. And while we were heading to the border direction, soon we realized the Chinese army were chasing us. And they were warning us to stop, and we did not stop. And then they started shooting in our way. And you could see that bullet comes next to your feet. And children running, holding my hands, they were screaming. So we were no longer able to run and towards any directions. We all stopped there and were arrested there.
How did you feel in that moment?
Scared, because we knew we were going to send back to North Korea. And we tried to get out from China. It became political treason act when you sent back to North Korea. And you wouldn't able to avoid the punishment, any types of punishment, it would come to us. And I was scared. I would never forget that picture and moment when I arrived in North Korea. The police was waiting for us and was swearing at us. You betrayed your dear leaders, country. And we were all tied up with hands and legs. Now I was in a prison cell. It was not a prison camp. It was one of the detention centers where you go through all that hard investigation. In my prison cell, as soon as it's underground basement prison go inside, you could see hundreds of prisoners in there. In my prison cell, I had around 50 people. No one, as soon as you enter the prison cell, usually people come, give you space for you, but there was none. No one wanted to make eye contact with you. Desperate, scary, darkness, and all put head down, and toilet was just next to us. We didn't have enough space to lie down. And we were sleeping lean on against each other's back like this. And the man who was leaning against my back, and I felt he was so heavy while he was leaning on me. I was going to tell him, can you do less lean on me? I was too tired. But then as soon as I was going to tell him something, and his body was falling, because he died while he was leaning against my back. The other inmates, they were just trying to avoid, because they were so scared. And we told the police guard, prison guard, that he died. And then he asked the 2 people to drag him out of the cell. I thought I was going to be killed like him. And you could hear at night time screaming and begging and beating. That was only in 2 days' time in that prison cell. and you don't have names in the prison. You have numbers. I think I'm now around the 35, 6. After the rest of my life, I'll never forget what I saw there. And also, things happened to me, the painful stuff, which I still have on my body. By the time when I was sent to my grandmother's house, I couldn't walk. I couldn't sit down. And they were so eager to find out, how did you get to Mongolian border? Who helped you? Did you meet any foreigners, missionaries? Anyone approached you, helped you? Because North Korea is very paralyzed against those groups who try to help them get out from China. Because more people get out, more stories come out, then what's happening inside the country must be revealed. And they are scared of that. And they know that's going to reduce the end of their regime. And my grandmother was holding me in tears. But I had to ask her, I have to cross the border again. So even when I made the second escape, asking my grandmother to help me to manage to second escape to China again, and she told me to leave like 2 a.m. because someone was watching us 24/7, my house, grandmother's house, and us. So there was no space you could think of escape during the day. So someone, which my good friend of mine from a local area, and his mom helped me to cross the border to China. She came to China together with me. And now I was in good hands and in care, medical treatment in China before I was attempting to try to leave China again. So after some treatment in China, now my journey was set to go to Shanghai International School. And I thought the Shanghai International School was able to help us get out from China instead of choosing to go through Mongolian border this time, because I was traumatized. And I met 8 North Korean women on a train in Beijing, and 9 of us together, we traveled to Shanghai. On our arrival in Shanghai, we checked the school and how hard school fence, as you don't have a passport, you can't go through that entrance, this gate. You have to illegally cross the fence, get into the school. We managed around lunchtime, and all 9 of us made a signal and started crossing the fence of the school and went inside the school. And we had a paper written that we're North Korean escapees, please help us. And school was now panicking. As you can imagine, public school, all these school children, young age children were all coming and watching us standing there. And school principal came and said to us, well, I'm gonna have a chat with someone and come back to you guys. He probably made a call with the US Embassy in Beijing. So it was American school. And after half an hour, he came back to us and said to us, we're very sorry, we're not a diplomatic center. We're not able to help you. We have to ask Chinese police to come and take you guys out. It was the end of the moment. And I remember very vividly what was happening that moment. All 9 of us, we made human chains because many Chinese police came inside school. But we didn't want to be picked up by Chinese police, put into police van. So we held like human chains, and we didn't move at all. We lied down even on the floor. Eventually, they had to use force to drag us into the police vans and beating women, pulling hairs out. And all these kids were watching us in tears. And now we ended up Shanghai police station. And I thought it was the end. So many North Korean escapees, we prepare to commit suicide during our journey because we don't want to be killed by the regime if we arrested and sent back. So I also prepared some pills in my pants and where I was hidden, and I swallowed many of them in the police station toilet with the toilet water, and I collapsed. And I thought, I'm now dead. I don't have to worry about repatriation, you know. But I woke up with a very good feeling of good night's sleep, actually. And then when I woke up, and they then sent me and the group to Shanghai International Prison. And in my cell, I had 7 inmates, all from different countries. Japanese, American, Chinese, Malaysian, Colombian, South Korean, and I was the only North Korean, youngest. But I was crying in that prison cell because now I was imagining what was going to happen to me, sent back to North Korea. I would be killed, executed, because I went to American school in Shanghai. So while I was crying every night, this South Korean guy, and they all curious about me actually. It's the first time they saw someone from North Korea, of course, young boy, why is he in here? You know? And the South Korean guy, because we speak the same language, he came to me and asked, and he was a gangster. And you can imagine the image of gangster. He has short hair, giant, you know, tattoos and big muscles. And he came asking me in Korean, why do you cry every night and not eating well? Everyone in this room is quite curious about you, you know. And I explained to him what's been happening. My journey ended up in this prison. I would be sent back to North Korea, and I would be killed, and I would be killed. And all these 7 people, they were caring, worrying about me. And this was one of my story of humanity, even among these prisoners, how they were looking after me, you know. Because they all had money in the prison cell. They could have their own prison bank account, family members sending and transferring money to their account. Then they buy snacks, sweet biscuits, tea, coffee, which I didn't have any because no one would able to send me anything. But every time when they were doing shopping, they were buying extra items for me. Yeah. So meanwhile, this gangster said to me, you have some time, if you want to read something, I can give you something. Actually, he gave me something. He gave me the Bible in the prison. In that prison cell, it was the darkest moment and terrifying, and you don't have hope at all. But when any tiny hope, if it comes to you, you'd want to grab it. And I grabbed it, and I actually prayed a lot. First time I ever prayed in my life. And I didn't know even how to pray because you don't learn anything, whatever, any kind of religion in North Korea. The only you prayed in North Korea was the Kim family. And when I asked the gangster, how do you pray? And he said, you say amen at the end of your wishes. So first ever I ever prayed in my life was, God, I don't want to be killed, amen. And I don't want to go back to North Korea, amen. I had hundreds of these lists. It's like as children, you pray for Santa to come to your house, you wish. And it was my last hope. Otherwise, in the prison cell, thinking of I would be killed, how I would be killed, how this repatriation would happen. And I exchanged that moment of my mentality into holding that last hope, what I maybe could hold. And after a couple of months, 2 men visited me in the prison. I first thought they were from North Korean embassy. While I was walking downstairs, my legs were shaking, and when I went outside the prison, 2 men were standing from far away distance, and they were actually smiling at me. And that smile didn't look like from North Korean embassy, but one guy was a South Korean diplomat. And the other guy was a Westerner. I wasn't sure where he came from. But they came and told me, you have very good news. And Chinese government made very unusual decision to deport me and my group to the Philippines instead of North Korea. There was a behind story from the school when we were arrested and hundreds of kids were standing and watching us in tears. One of the 13-year-old students, she actually wrote an email to a reporter. And she said, even broken English grammar, as you can see, that little girl, we were traumatized. We traumatized watching their arrest and beaten up and dragged them into police vans. And we were young and powerless. We were in tears, couldn't do anything. As a reporter, could you please do something? And that little girl's email touched the reporter's heart. And then she urged CNN, Washington Post, BBC, and other international media to pressure on the Chinese government to not send them back to North Korea because they would be killed. Now, who watched the news and human rights groups protested in front of Chinese groups and even religious groups, they all joined together, protested. They didn't know who we were, and they did. So they all stood together for us, although they didn't know even who we were.
How did it feel to be free?
Oh. I was over the moon. The day I was leaving the prison cell, they were banging the prison gates. They were all these inmates, and they were hugging me, clapping, and live well your free life. When I arrived in this country, the first my impression, they were welcoming me. And those immigration officers, I remember during the process we were going through and hearing what happened and seeing my torture scars, they were tearing down. And they said, we didn't know what was happening in North Korea. It's just a miracle how I got survived. And maybe because of that, how I got able to survive, I can tell you a story. And we all these defectors, we have stories to tell. And stories to tell why crimes against humanity should be stopped. And should more people to speak out and speak up against these atrocities. It's been a long journey. But three things I have learned significantly. We are all same human being. When I was in prison cell, I had my inmates were all from different countries, different continents, but realized that we were as the same human being there. We feel, we communicate, we cry, we eat, we slept together on that bed. And we were carrying each other. Obviously, we were all criminals, according to what China said. But there was one thing we were powerful enough to be together in that room, love. And I survived because of the power of love.
They would hold the baby by the leg, by the foot, and then smash them against the tree. And they kill hundreds of babies each day, just to free the mother to go to work.